My mom had passed away about 17 months before this, but she came to me and she said, "It is not your time to be here and you need to fight." And when she said fight, my brother who had passed on came, stood by her, put his hand on her shoulder like, "I agree." And I'm laying in my bed and now all these people are appearing in front of me.
Still have questions after watching these videos? Perfect. Come hang out with me on Wake Up Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern, where we will answer your questions live. And you never know what surprise guests might show up. Thank you for watching. My guest today is Holly Porter, who had a near-death experience. So, Holly, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Laurie.
Well, this will be an interesting conversation because I know yours came with a little bit of trauma, but also came with some really cool and different information. So I'm going to let you start at the beginning and just share your NDE in any way that makes sense for you.
Oh, sure. Well, a little bit of pre-story, I guess. I was this for me, it happened 4.5 years ago or so. And I was a really healthy person. I never really got sick. Maybe a cold once a year, but we raised 8 adult children now and we have 19 grandkids. So we were always really involved in all those kinds of things. And we usually had anywhere from 2 to 4 companies going at a time. Between my husband and I was raised by entrepreneurs and he had a construction company and so we always just, yeah, it was just busy, busy, busy. And I went to a conference. I'm kind of a conference junkie. Um, I love personal development stuff mostly and anything that helps just move the needle forward, right? I always want to be learning. And I went to this particular women's conference that I went to every year. It was during COVID. And so it was the fall now of 2021. So we're about a year and a half into that nonsense. And I hadn't had COVID or got sick or anything. And I came back about the night before I was getting on the airplane. I started having a headache really bad and I wasn't feeling great. But again, just chalked it up to, oh, I must be just catching something, the flu, whatever. And when I got on the plane, we were all still wearing masks and things. And gosh, I look back now and I just think how many people I must have infected. And it makes me sad because I had the Delta version. So 2 days after I get home, I test and I am positive for COVID. So we were actually living in a fifth wheel on my dad's property, which we weren't roughing it at all, but we were in between houses and we were getting one under contract and so we just hunkered down in there. People would just leave us food on the steps, but I don't even remember eating for that whole time. And I didn't even consider getting any help because I don't know. I just, like I said, I don't get sick. And about a week in, I'm not any better. And I mean, it was like a blur that week. And I intuitively woke up and knew I was in big trouble. So wake my husband up and I said, we got to get to the hospital now. And so I don't know how he got us there because I gave him COVID and he was about 2 days behind me. He never was hospitalized, but he was on oxygen, had blood clots and things. And he drove us there. And we didn't even consider calling an ambulance because we didn't want to get anybody sick. And so he said, I dropped you off in the front of the ER and went to go park. And we know how long the ER takes, to get you all processed. He said, by the time I walked in that door, they already had you on the way to the ICU. Like my oxygen was 63. Everything was shutting down. Like I didn't have long. So that began the first day of 70 in the hospital with COVID, 2 hospitals. Um, and it was not a fun journey, especially going from being in charge of things and just it's total surrender when this something like this happens. I went about 4 days before they put me on the ventilator for the first time. And, I'll listen to that recording sometimes, especially because when I was doing my book, I wanted everything to be in integrity and kind of have things fresh. And we were having a conversation. By the way, my husband couldn't come see me for 3.5 weeks while I was in there because he had COVID. And he was so weak that I count my blessings that they would let one person every 24 hours in with me. So many people died with nobody. when they wouldn't let anybody in. So I feel very grateful. I have twin sisters just younger than me, and they just rolled their sleeves up and knew intuitively that I needed someone there 24/7. Whether it was for I don't my peace of mind, for the accountability to the medical staff, I don't know. I just know they were very intuitive, very protective over me, and they just were there. And I know that alone saved my life. Having There were so many miracles. In fact, in my book, I have a whole chapter dedicated to 11 miracles. And some of them are twofers, as I talk about, but there were just so many blessings within a tragedy. And we all have that if we just really think about it, right? And so let's see, I was on a ventilator twice. I had a trachea. I ended up getting sepsis. I had some other infection, at least one that I couldn't even tell you the name. We looked it up when I was writing my book, but it was so long. I can't even say it. And like any of those would have taken me out. So I was one sick person. I was in a coma about 30 days. I was on a ventilator, total of about 52 between two ventilations and the trachea, feeding tube for 63. I was happy when I was in a coma because I was having out of body experiences. I had a spiritual transformative experience and a near death experience all within that first 3.5 weeks. So they kind of stopped about the day I got the trachea was the day my husband was the first time he could come see me for a couple hours. And I think that's about the time all my experiences stopped. So that was interesting that they all happened when he wasn't around. Um, but yeah, they were all, it was interesting to know until I went to the IANS, International Association for Near Death Studies conference a couple years later. I found out they existed. I went to it. I was very fascinated to know that all these experiences were different, and I had all of them. And I was like, oh, that's nice that there's actually a label, a name, whatever for them. But I could tell you the difference between each one. And so as soon as I knew, I could identify, oh yeah, that was an out of body experience. Oh, that was my spiritual transformative experience and my near death. And I could tell also if it was a nightmare, or a bad dream or just dreaming. Like I just they were so definitively different for me. So I was happy to understand there were different experiences and um anyway, it was a wild ride. So that's kind of where the whole thing started, and we can talk about all of them, or we can talk about just the near death. Where would you like to go?
Okay. I guess before I have you say which one I think is the best one to start, I need to understand, and I know maybe time wasn't super lucid in a coma state, but what one did you have first, second, and third? For you had STE, so spiritually transformative experience, OBE, out of body experience, and NDE, near death experience. What was the order?
So the out of body experience were the whole time. I was having those all the time. The near death was in the middle. It was in between my first and second intubation because I was doing better. So I had the near death, almost died. I was doing better, so they took me off the ventilator. So I can tell you exactly like when that happened. And then the spiritual one was when I knew I was going to live for me. That was about at the end. And so, but the in between that, all the out of body experiences were happening all the time.
Okay. Well, I'd like to start with maybe a couple of the out of body experiences that you had.
Sure.
And then let's go to the near death experience and let's end with the spiritually transformative when you knew you were going to live.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So the out of body were really interesting because I went back in time almost all of the time. And then several times I went like present time, but I never went forward in time, if that makes sense. So I must have known in my brain somehow that if I knew I was in that bed, I knew I was sick, and things weren't going well. And somehow I knew if that bed didn't come with me on my journey, then I might not get it back. My body's in there and I might not get it back. So like those experiences I always left in my bed. And so I have a chapter called Me in My Bed in my book because we just traveled everywhere together. I wouldn't stay in the bed, but I was there. I would know that was there. One of the times in the hospital, clearly that I remembered, I had a ex-brother-in-law had a brother a couple doors down from me. So the hospital was full. They had a couple floors worth. It was the Delta version. Half the people there were dying. And I remember standing outside the door of this uh, family member's brother, and he had pulled the ventilator out a couple times. Like he smoked. He wasn't healthy. And I just remember watching him in there knowing he was gonna die and thinking, how sad, oh, this is really sad, he's gonna die. And I was actually out of my body looking, in there doing that. So like I remembered that happening. So that was a present time. I remember staying in I remember hearing people have asked me like, "Oh, well, when you were in your coma, do you remember conversations?" I know clearly there was one with one of my sisters. She was in the process of buying an Airbnb, and so she must have been having those. We're all in real estate. We all worked for the same real estate company, and so she must have been having those conversations in the room because I was in an out of body experience in present time in an Airbnb that she had just got. Like it was almost like crossing over, like the right side was the hospital wing, and then I'm in her place, So I knew I needed care, but I remember I peed her bed and there were brand new sheets at her Airbnb, and I remember apologizing, and she's like, "What are you talking about?" Like just weird, crazy stuff. That was another present time, but usually I went back to a town in Parowan, Utah. It's a little pioneer town. It's only about 15 minutes from where I live right now. There was a house that's now owned by the city that's a museum, and it ended up being my great 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 grandfather's home. And when I went back to it, it's because you can tour it. I went in there and they gave me a pamphlet, and it was approximately 165 years old. So they had remodeled it a couple times, but this creepy staircase that was in the experience was still there. Like when you see stuff and you're like, okay, that's there still. This was real. It's like you get your own confirmations. If you're second guessing anything your brain's doing. And COVID was a brain disease. So I mean, I had all kinds of brain fog going on, but to know the clarity too that I had was unbelievable. I mean, to have the clarity to know to take my bed with me because my body's in it and I might not get it back if it doesn't go on this journey. I mean, that said a lot to me. So I would do all these journeys back, 165 whatever years ago, and some of them were scary. Like we kind of like have skeletons in our closets in our families. I was like, okay, this is interesting. Later I kind of found out when there was a entity in my NDE I'll talk about later, that are coming back. Like a lot of times people that have these experiences, they say it takes 10, sometimes 20 years. They start unraveling things. You've probably heard that a lot. And so it's only been 4.5. And I was actually told in a hypnosis session, more will be revealed to you when the time is right. And I was at peace with that. That's not my norm. My norm is like, nope, I gotta know now. I want to know everything, whatever. And it's just like, okay, got it. I couldn't have handled everything I have found out even in the 4.5 years if I would have known all at once. Like it just is, it's too much. And so I'm at peace with that. I know that, but I know this entity that was in my near death experience, it came in some of my out of body experiences. And I really like, I know this will creep people out. I think that he followed me around until I was vulnerable enough in my near death to take me. And it's just like, we're all vulnerable at some point. We're dying, we're vulnerable. It's just how it is. Cause I know people have thought that is just so weird and, oh, that's scary. And it's like, you know, we all end up in a better place in the end. So at least we hope we do, right? But yeah, so those out of body ones were sometimes I would actually and visualize like an ambulance, like my hospital room. My sister said, "You never left this room." When I'm trying to tell them about all my journeys, like, "You never left here. You had surgery here, everything was here." And I'm like, "Oh, I went everywhere, whatever." And so I would picture my room like as a storage, like what goes on trucks, like a Connex type thing, and the ambulance would hook up to it. Some days I didn't, I just went with my bed, but sometimes my whole room would go. It would hook up on the ambulance, and it would take me on my journey for the day. And I knew I was sick, so it would have to bring me back to the hospital and unhook me, and I'd be there for my care that night. I mean, just crazy things like that would happen. And um there was just some scary experiences. There was some fun experiences. Just the traveling. I mean, it was just like interesting to experience. Like I didn't know what astral traveling was. Like I had heard of the term near death, but I just didn't know. Yeah, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. So it's been a learning journey for me going, oh, okay, that's what that was. Oh, there's that answer. Oh, there's that. So I've enjoyed the little bits and pieces that have come since, and I know they're still coming. So like it's exciting for me. I'm not afraid. I was never afraid to die. Definitely am not now. But here I am, and we're
Wow.
here.
Well, I'm curious because you did mention that you could tell the difference between a dream, your out of body experiences, your near death experience. So tell us what the delineation is between those things. Because in
Yeah.
some ways, as you're describing this and you're taking the bed and sharing some of these parts, it does seem very dreamlike, but you knew
Yeah.
that they weren't. So can
Yeah.
you explain that?
Well, I think when I like on the out of body, when I would go in my bed and I would leave to the experience, and then I would be out of my bed having the experience. So it was like it was my travel means of travel. And so the out of when I knew I was there, it was kind of like um I'm living in a space like people have asked me, do you think that was a past life you went to? You think you live? I don't know. I don't know any of that. Like I just know that it was like traveling in a place that it felt so different. Like a dream for me was like for instance, I had this weird dream one time that I like people were outside of my room and it was almost like a picture like New York City. It looked kind of like similar like that. And people were um they had to be hooked up for air. Everybody needed oxygen. And so they would like a parking meter. They would have to put money in the parking meter if they ran out of air to get air. And if they didn't have money, there was just like dead people laying around. I mean, to me, that was more of a nightmare. That wasn't like I wasn't traveling anywhere. It was just I remember it felt like it was just outside my room. And this is happening in the world while I'm here sick in this hospital bed. And that felt just more weird, it was like a weird dream. Um, so there was that feeling. The near death obviously is way more spiritual. Obviously, I'm seeing and feeling things way, way on a higher plane. And the same with the spiritual experience. But if I had a nightmare, it was usually that. Like when we have nightmares and we wake up and we're like, whoa, oh, that felt really creepy, or that was just weird. Every feeling was different. Like I could just say, okay, this experience happened. Oh, that was just a nightmare, a bad dream. Oh, I was just dreaming that. I dream things about people in my family. I remember asking my sisters something about, one of their kids, something happening and they're laughing like, no, that never happened, but that was just a dream. And so I don't know if that explains it very well. That's just in my brain. That's kind of how it felt.
Well, there's something that might help a little bit, and I don't know if you have this, but with your out of body experiences, you're traveling to other places and you're seeing different things. Did you ever have anything that gave you evidential evidence? So, in other words, you had an experience, you explained it to somebody later, and you knew something you couldn't have known any other way.
Yeah. Well, the one where I was in the hospital and saw him in his room and knew he was going to die, like that was one time I can definitely point. And then that the staircase was very significant because I remember in at the out of body that staircase. It was a spiral staircase because it was an old pioneer home, and then the bottom of it was a dirt floor, and so like I remember you could look over and see down and see the floor because it spiraled enough to where you could see the bottom of it. And I remember I didn't want to go down there because I remember it was creepy. Like I was like there is some horrible like in my mind what I was thinking there was like science projects going on down there like test tube babies and I mean weird stuff came to my mind, like I'm not going down there. And so I remember when I revisited it a couple years ago later that staircase being there, I mean, I remember when I saw it, that feeling was like, holy crap. It's probably not what I said, but I went and I looked over and I could see the dirt floor still. Like they had remodeled the house a couple times. There was another staircase that went downstairs. They actually had a cow that they kept in that basement. So there were just like things that got verified that I was like, oh wow. So that I would say that was like the biggest moment when I knew, oh, yep, you've been here. You've been here. And I remember visiting that home because it's a museum the city owns now. Um, but I remember when my kids were little, we had a cousins camp and we did a little field trip there. So I remember that I had been there and I thought it was some kind of a relative. I wasn't sure what. I found out later it was my great 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 grandfather's house, but he didn't live there. I found out later very much. Most of his family did, but he was off, serving missions for his church and things like that. And so, it's just interesting when you do little research and a little digging and it verifies things. It's just, I loved it. I loved having the answers and not thinking, oh yeah, you were just dreaming all that or you just made all that up. Like when you actually physically, and I took my husband and my friend with me, and I mean, they were fascinated, it's just like, oh wow, that's crazy,
Okay, well, let's go on to the near death experience. I'm super curious about this one.
Yeah. So this one, there's kind of a part one and a part two. So part one, I left for the near death experience in my bed, just like I usually did. But this time I was rolled out of my hospital room and I'm being driven down the hallway of the hospital. And I remember before they intubate you, I mean, I'm half dead and they're making me sign all kinds of forms, to even intubate me. So I must have been fresh on my memory. I must have known where I was headed. I maybe didn't really want to go because as soon as I'm going down there, I'm seeing other beds being rolled down the hallways, the other hallways, as you're kind of, and I think they were just other people dying because half of the people were dying in the hospital. So I saw that first, and then I remember passing the nurse station and getting up and shaking my finger at him, saying, "I rescind my DNR. I rescind my DNR," which is do not resuscitate. So I must have kind of had some kind of inclination where I was headed. Then I end up being at the end of the hallway, and it's like the way I call it the Stadium of Light, which I've heard other people say, which has been really interesting when people say they describe it. It's like, yes, I'm not crazy. Um, I end up going, so say picture a football stadium, but it was way, way bigger. But all the beds were being rolled into like the skyboxes around because we were in beds. And then there's this like pause of time that I didn't have accounted for. And then I'm out of my bed like I usually was when I got to the experience. But now I'm in the Stadium of Light and there are hundreds and thousands of people there. So way bigger than obviously a football stadium. And I remember looking around and I could see feet. So I knew nobody was like sitting in stands or anything, like they were floating. And then I remember the conversations were like just light speed. It was like definitely telepathy. It was like if you thought a thought, you had your answer before you even finished the thought. I mean, it was just like so, so, so quick. So it was like so positive, there's not room for negative, so to speak. Like I always felt like in my life, I had the gift of knowing, not a psychic ability, but just people that have that know what I'm saying because people will ask you, how do you know that? You just do. You don't know how, you just do. And it was like it was like the gift of all knowing, and which probably had to do with, the conversations. But then all four sound, I mean, all four directions, I start hearing music. And it's like the most angelic sound I ever heard. And they were like angels singing. And I remember not ever hearing the song, but knowing the words to the song, which was probably part of the knowing. And I like to sing, so I just joined in and we had the best concert ever, is how I explained it later. I was like, oh no, it's in all the newspapers. Like we read newspapers anymore. Anyway, listening to myself explain it later, I'm like, okay, no one understands this. So I enjoyed the whole concert thing, dealt with all that. There was a lot of matter. It was interesting because my in the hospital I had lost all five senses. I had lost my taste and smell from COVID. They tied my hands to the bed, so I lost touch. My hearing was 90% gone from the ventilator. Don't ask me why, but everybody sounded like the Charlie Brown school teacher. Wah, wah, wah. And then I'm past legally blind without correction. So unless someone was about 8 inches in front of me, I didn't know who anybody was. And and then they all wore, the mask and the hat and the gown that were yellow, and most everybody had some kind of eye protection on. So everybody looked the same to me. So like it was like going from no senses to all senses, like this knowing to all knowing. And so of course I'm living it up. I mean, I you don't have time to think anything negative in there, but I could see through this like fog. It was like bright white, just like all the clothing. The clothing wasn't, everybody wasn't like in white though. It was all bright, but it wasn't necessarily everything pure white or anything. But I could see through this fog somehow. I just every sense was on fire. And then I remember I was having my life review, and it was like sitting watching a play, is how I envisioned it. And all I was seeing was the good. That's it. And I'm like, I didn't question it because you don't think of a negative thought. So I didn't think, why am I not seeing the bad? I've done plenty of bad. I'm not thinking none of that. I'm just enjoying the show, and I'm seeing the acts of kindness and the service and the love and the family. And so I'm enjoying that. And then I was told two things then. And I was not given a choice to come back. Okay. I will say I probably would have stayed because I joke, say my kids are adults, and I can definitely probably do more from the other side to them than I could do what I'm doing now, right? They don't have to listen to me anymore. So I probably would have stayed, but I didn't get that choice. And so I was told, first of all, to start a nonprofit, and I was given the name Adventure Bucket Wish, but I wasn't given a mission. And then I was told the day that I the day I found out I had COVID, I pitched like on a Zoom, 9 people. I was so sick. Got up, pitched. I was going to partner this new company called Retreat R&R. It wasn't incorporated yet, but I was going to pitch. I mean, I wanted to partner with them. They had a billionaire backer. So I was really excited about it. I was told not to. I was told that wasn't the highest and best thing to do, that it needed to stay mine and not do it. Interesting how later you find out things in the whys, right? So I remember being kind of disappointed about that when I came back, but because there was a lot more to figure out on my own. So I get put back. Now I'm in all the pain again. I have no energy. I mean, it was awful. I'm still on a ventilator. Um, I wake up, and my sister Jill's there, and she could tell I was definitely feeling some anxiety. I had lots of anxiety. I'd never experienced really anxiety in my life, but you take your breath away, and I think everybody would experience anxiety. You want to breathe, right? um, the PTSD that came. All these things that I never had had before. Well, she said she went and grabbed the alphabet because I couldn't talk, so I could point to letters, and it would take a long time to communicate even one word because I couldn't even hardly lift my hand. And she said, "You got it," and you started spelling KID. And she's like, "Oh, do you need me to help you with your kids? Do you need me to tell them something? I mean, they're trying to help me." And she knew that wasn't it. And she says, you continued NAP. And she's like, when you spelled kidnap, I wanted to like grab the garbage can and throw up in it because I was like, they said you were doing better. So I ran an errand, and while I was gone, what happened? Like she was like so protective. And she said, as soon as you got that out to me, and I'm like freaking out about it, the doctor and the nurse walk in to extubate me because I was doing better. So they decided to take the tube out. So they extubate you. You could talk, not very well, but you had a lot to say, is what she said. And there were still spirits in the room. And I still, I kind of know now maybe who they are, but it's like that's not confirmed yet. So, but I wasn't afraid of the spirits, but I learned quickly that I was the only one that could see them. I believe now they were the ones that brought me back because I feel like it was like a spiritual intervention at that point. Why I felt kidnapped confused me for 2 years. I didn't have that answer. And I always thought, why would I feel kidnapped when I'm in this place? I would have stayed. Like, what is going on? So I never really had an answer for that right away. But I was so sick, and I got long COVID after that. And for a year and a half after that, I mean, there was so much to unravel. I was a mess. All the diagnoses from COVID came, all these health issues came that I never had before, and it was just like I was a freaking mess. So, do you have any questions on that part?
Yeah, actually, I do have quite a few. Is that how did you come back?
What do you mean by how? Like,
Well, you were having a near-death experience and you were in this place with all of these other people, and then you have the what I'm going to call life review. And
yeah.
then how did you come back into your body? Did you have an awareness that you came back into your body after that experience?
I feel like I just got thrown back in it because I
Okay.
remember just feeling, well, I'm saying I got kidnapped, so I'm sure there was like so much there that I was like, what is happening? I just was at this great place and now I'm here. Like, so I just, yeah, it felt like just being thrown back in. It's like, nope, you didn't get to choose. This is what you got to do. And now you're going back. So yeah.
All right, I want to go back to all of the people that you were seeing. So you're seeing a multitude of people. You know that they're not wearing shoes because you can see their feet. Can you see
Uh-huh.
their features? Can you see, are they a variety of ages? Are they all a similar age? What do they physically look like?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't feel like I have a lot of details on that. I feel like that's part of my more's gonna come. What I do remember is it was like everybody, I want to say everybody was living their best life. Well, of course they were. But it was like, if we're living our best life, then we're going to be at our highest and best. So that's how I would feel like I felt from people. I don't know if they were necessarily all the same ages or they were in their prime. What's prime? I mean, really, do we know? I feel like, probably mid 20s to 30s is probably prime. But I knew who people were. Like if I knew them, I knew them. It wasn't there were hundreds of thousands of people there though. So it was just like this unconditional love of oneness, I guess. Is how I would explain it because it didn't matter that I maybe had never seen them before or known them or whatever. I mean, it didn't matter. Like we were all just like part of the bigger picture.
Were there some people that you actually did recognize?
Not until I had my hypnosis session later.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Do you want to save that or do you want to share it now?
Yeah, because that's really the part two that, oh my gosh.
Okay.
I hate to
We'll save the part
almost
two.
yeah, I almost hate to say that it was like having another NDE. Kind of was, but
Well, there's nothing wrong with saying that. I mean,
oh,
that's how it
well,
feels
it's
to you
kind
if
of like
that's
you don't
how it
want to
feels to
compare
you.
it to that, but our to when our minds can recreate it, and I'm certified in hypnosis, so like it doesn't scare me or anything. I was like that was one of the best things I did at the time I did it.
Okay. So you said that you had the gift of all knowing in that place.
Yeah.
Were you able to bring any of that knowledge back?
I wish. I don't know. I feel like, nope, if I do, it's gonna come later. And I'm okay with that. But I wish I had all these answers because I had to go through a lot the last 4.5 years. And it would have
I'm
been
sure.
nice to have some of those answers.
Yeah, I bet it would be.
Yeah.
So you also described this angelic music, and you said it wasn't music that you had ever heard before, but you knew the words and you sang along. So did it get ingrained enough in you that when you came back, you were ever able to hear anything that came close to sounding like that music?
Never.
How is it different than the music that we have here?
I think it was like more vibrational is the only way I could think of it. There's a lot of good music here on Earth. And I mean, I guess so there's a lot of spiritual sounds out there, but I've never before, during or since ever heard anything I could even say, "Oh wow, that kind of sounds like that." I've never. I mean, I can't even compare.
Okay. Yeah, that happens a lot when I ask that question for people who've had music experiences.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this play that you called it, where you were seeing all of the positive events in your life play out again. Is it safe to call this a life review?
I mean, that's the only way that I envisioned what I saw was because it was. it was parts of my life. I mean, maybe it was all. I don't remember all, but I just remember later I'm thinking, why didn't I see the bad? You're not there where you question it. I did question it in my hypnosis session though, and I got an answer. So that
Okay.
was really cool.
Well, let's talk about some of how this process worked. So while you're watching this, you said it felt more like watching a play. Are
Yeah.
you in a room? Is there a stage? Is there a screen? How are you visually seeing this?
Well, if to me a screen would be more like a movie. And so for me, it felt like live reenactments almost. It was like you're just like that's why I would say a play because it felt like I was there and they were there, more on a stage, I would say. And then I was just seeing like all these reenactments of things and the just the love that was shown and I mean because even bad people do good things, even if they're rotten to the core, they're at some point everybody has good in them. They've done it, they've experienced, we've all experienced some sort of joy in our life. And so you think about, I mean, I'm in my 50s. I had a lot of years that I had, I mean, there was plenty of bad, but I didn't have to experience that. And I will say, so jumping ahead to unless you have another question about
I
that.
do. I
Oh,
want to
okay.
stay here for just a second
Yeah,
because
you're
I
fine.
want to understand this. So when you're having this experience, is it more from a detached perspective of you're watching it the way that somebody would sit in an audience and watch a play, or are you becoming those scenes again?
No, I feel like it was like I was just a witness to it.
Okay. And then can you give us an example of were there any scenes that you saw that you're like, I don't even remember doing that. I don't remember that.
I think it was more like oh yeah, like a reminder. I don't feel like it wasn't like I don't remember doing that.
Can you share any of the scenes that you remember seeing?
Nothing really now. I mean, I was in Rotary International for 14 years, so it's a service club and we did, a lot of international projects. I was part of international conferences. And so we did a lot of projects in other countries, that aren't as blessed as us. And so I think like reenactments of that type of stuff, it brought joy because it was like I felt like I was kind of raised pretty sheltered, and so to see like the bigger picture of how you're affecting someone across the world and how that changed them. I mean, we built wells, for people that had no water and bathrooms in schools so the girls didn't have to drop out of school because they had to drop out of school once they started, their monthlies. So things like that I think brought me the most joy is those reminders, but if it didn't feel like I'm seeing it for the first time, it felt like the reminders. Yeah.
And while you're having all of those experiences and watching that from that vantage point, are you also seeing the ripple effect that those were having? Like you just mentioned, how you were affecting other people by creating wells. Was it just your own personal experience if you're there building the well, or would it fully manifest into the experience of the person that you were affecting?
Yeah, I haven't really given that a lot of thought. I know so I have connected over my life 14 couples, so 28 people who got married. Like I just feel like I see people's energy and know that that relationship's going to be good. And it doesn't mean they had to get married. I've connected other people with other people, the business people too, but none of them are divorced. And I mean, I with the what 50% divorce rate, I think that's a pretty good odds. And I think just the feeling that I got to experience that joy that I brought to other people and that love that I gave and that service that I gave, I think just experiencing that. But probably part of more will be revealed to you. I'm gonna just go back to that. I feel like that's the exciting thing is like, oh, I'm gonna be reminded of that. Wow, that's gonna be awesome when I am, you know?
Sure, absolutely. Okay, let's go ahead and go on to the spiritually transformative experience that you had. And it sounds like in a regression session.
Yeah. Okay. First, can I tell you the rest of the NDE?
Oh, I thought you were done with the NDE. When
No,
you
because
said, do you have any questions? I thought you were finished with
oh,
it.
no, no, because the near death experience, the hypnosis brought back things I didn't remember.
Oh, yes, yes. I totally get
So
what you're saying now. So you're not you ended it where it ended with what you remembered. And
yes, the
how far
action.
after the NDE did you have this regression?
So 2 years. And I will say, so what I did after I got out of the hospital, very, very sick. I know God had his hands, whatever that is for anybody else, I respect. But for me, that's who it is. I know he had his hands in so much of it because, I'm given these two assignments to do. So I get a 501(c)(3 for the nonprofit. I decide the mission's going to be for long COVID. It's underserved. People don't know anything about it. It's so needed. And changed it later, by the way, but there's a whole story behind that. So I'm doing that. I incorporate the nonprofit and retreat R&R about the first 4 months after I got out of the hospital. Miracle that even happened, by the way. And then I started this, what I call almost 2 years of hell, complete and utter hell. And the only way I can explain it is take every bad day you've ever had and times it by 100. That's how heavy everything felt for me. Every relationship almost was jeopardized, minus my husband and a couple siblings and a couple close friends. It's like I repelled everyone. I thought, how did I come back from being where I was? Everybody should like want to embrace me. I almost died here. And it was like I repelled everybody. It was the most heartbreaking. I cried every day. I'm not a crier. I wished I would have died every day. Like, I know I've heard other people say they kind of went through that too after they had an experience, which helped confirm, okay, good, I'm not alone. But it took me, so that's when I went to the IANS conference, was when I was just coming out of that and found out all this stuff. I think I was just ready for more. I was ready to know more. So 2 years later, also, about 2 months after I came back from IAN's conference, I asked my teacher, mentor, certifier, if he would do a hypnosis session on just my NDE. I said, I'm writing this book and I want out of integrity. I got the out of body, I got the spiritual, but out of integrity. There's some gaps in the story, and I want to make sure that if there's anything there, I want to remember them. So he said yes. So we did that. And where he took me was interesting because it was like, I feel like this is how I kind of put it together. That space of time from when I got to the stadium to being in the stadium, that just space of time there, I feel like that's where I had this intervention. So I end up in this in between, is what I call it. So it wasn't dark and it wasn't light. And the dark's on the right and the light's on the left. And all that matter that was light in my near death experience, now it's like the weird colors. It's like, silver, cobalt blue, and black and gray colors I can't describe that are swirling around. But before it was so clear, even though they were light colors, it was clearer. Now it's like heavy. It just felt really heavy. Um, there ended up being an entity there. I think maybe there were more, but more will be revealed later. He said that too. In fact, my hypnosis teacher just said, we need to do another one. I think there's more. And I says, I think you're right, because we learned so much. So we end up talking to this entity. His name's Darby. Darby wants my light. He can't have the light. He can't go to the light. I didn't feel afraid of him. I didn't feel like he was good, but he wasn't evil. It was just this in between space. So they bantered. My hypnosis friend had my back. Like, he was like bantering with him about, you didn't, that's her light and she earned that and that's not yours and you're stealing it from her. And they're having this conversation about why he should let me have my light. As the light's coming, I could feel it on my face, and that brightness that I saw in the stadium, it was like it was there. And Darby says, "The light's coming to take her, and I'm not going to be able to stop it." So he's like, "Well, then let her go." So eventually, he doesn't have a choice. He lets me go, and I move forward, and I look over to the right, far, far away, and there's a mountain with one eye on it. And I saw it twice. And it was interesting that it was on the dark side, but I feel like it was a protector. Like, there's more to that I don't understand. But I feel like it was there. The second time I saw it, I remember looking, going, "You're seeing that for a reason. All right, noted. It's there. You saw it twice now. Remember that." So then I go forward, and there's a tree. And the tree brought me so much peace. Remember, I hadn't felt peace. In fact, until last year, I could tell you I had never felt so much peace in my life until now. Like, I didn't know what that was. And I go and I see this tree, and basically what it meant for me was when I was told to start, this retreat R&R, not partner with the billionaire backer. So I did. Again, I let them know that I felt like that the logo needed to have a tree, be a tree. And so I get it back, and the tree has 11 leaves and 11 roots. Like I never made one correction. It was like, whoa, okay, 1111. The day I got out of the hospital. So many other things, as we know, that stands for so much of that. And so I was like, that's it. Okay, so for me, it was basically, look, you didn't remember this as part of your NDE. I'm showing you it now because you went and created what I asked you to do, and you didn't even remember this is part of it. So it was just like this, like, oh, thank you, thank you. I call it a God gift. So then I get over to the light side, and the second thing I was told to do was start the nonprofit Adventure Bucket Wish. I get over there, and all that swirly. Oh, by the way, all the swirly stuff, matter, I call it, would form into a heart, and then it would all float to the left, which was the light. So even in the dark, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, even in the dark, it's attracted to the light. The heart represented just that love, and it would go to the light. So when I get to the light, the matter that's the bright matter that I could see through before, now it's creating hearts again, but now they're like a pink rose colored quart heart. And that was my second sign, because my nonprofit that I was told to do, when we did our fundraiser, I knew every bag the gift bag that I gave everybody had to have a pink colored rose quartz heart in it. No one had ever questioned me. I didn't know why. I just like put it in there. I was like, knew it needed to be there. And when I saw that, it was just that other God gift saying, hey, you did it. You did what I asked you to, and you created that heart in there as part of this, and you didn't even remember. Okay, so then I go and I revisit my near death, or my life review, excuse me. And I remembered to ask, why am I not seeing the bad? And that was so I did not see God, but he spoke to me clear as day. And this is what he said. He said, I'm showing you the good because that's what matters. And I thought, wow, what a God of love. I mean, of course, that's what matters. And remember, I just come out of 2 years of hell. My heart didn't want to see any bad. Like I had already witnessed, I had already felt that. Like I know now I had to go through all that for the philanthropy work I have to do in the future. I know I had to live that literal hell to know what I'm going to create, right? And so it was just like, oh, thank you. And then he said these words to me. He said, love them where they're at. And I thought, wow, if I would have remembered those words from the actual near death experience, I wouldn't have probably had that 2 years of hell. Because it takes, when you love people where they are, it takes that judgment out of the equation. It just, you let it go. And there were so many things that were happening in my life that I'm a fighter. Mama bear comes out, grandma bear comes out, and it's like we were dealing with some icky stuff. And if I would have had that message, I wouldn't have got the lessons that I needed to learn for the philanthropy work. And so now I have that message, and I always share that on anything I'm in as part of, because it really does matter to love people where they are. And so that was kind of the rest of the story, and pretty exciting.
Beautiful. I especially loved the end where you said love them where they are because it takes the judgment out. What do you think you understand about judgment after having your experience?
Well, that's not our place. That's for sure. It's just, we're not the judge and jury. There's a higher power doing that. And I feel like I have that little judgment side to my personality, and I catch myself every day having to remind myself of those words. But when I do, it shifts the energy completely.
Is that how you believed before the near death experience too, that you weren't
No, I
judged?
mean, love people, love them, but not love them where they're at. It's like it's different. It feels energetically very different to me. Yeah.
Wow. Um, you said you saw the eye as the protector, and we talked a little bit before we got started because I noticed your artwork that's behind you, and
Yeah.
you said, "Oh, that's what I saw before." Are you aware? that in Egyptian culture, they have the eye of horse, which is the protector, and depending on the which way the eye is facing, its protector or its knowledge, opening you up to knowledge. So, do you think there was a connection at all there?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm drawn to it. A lot of people think it's evil, and of course, I call it evil eye, which is not means that it really. If people just do a little more research on it, for me, it definitely wasn't evil, or I wouldn't have it on my wall. I don't, especially. I feel like it's significant that it's on my wall because I feel like it was watching me, but it was protecting me. But it's that part of having my back. I have a thing with that. Like I love when people have my back because there's so many that don't. And so I feel like it's behind me and it has my back. So
Oh, that's
there's
great.
more to that.
What do you mean?
No, I feel like I don't know. I feel like
Oh,
there's the
it's
rest
gonna
of the
come later.
story. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you also said that God entered the picture. You used the word God very specifically because you said you knew that it was God. How did you know?
I think it was that all of knowing and just I think that was part of it. It just everything like people have asked me, did you have guides? I think there's more to the story, yes, but specifically, do I remember all that? But no. And that was, I directed that question to God. Like I wanted to know. I feel like it's God showing us our life review. So of course I'm directing it to him. And like I didn't see him, but I heard him. I mean, it was just like so clear. Like just that knowing. That's who it was telling me that. Yeah.
Okay, I have one more question for you, which is about Darby. The
Okay.
spirit that you were told wants your light and couldn't have your light. What do you understand about who that entity was, or what that entity was, or what it represented?
Yeah. Well, he said he had no connection to me. He just wanted my light. Um, so fast forward a little, while I was writing my book last fall, I realized, and I like ran and called my editor and ran down and told my husband, I was like, oh my gosh. And we didn't put this in the book just because it was so fresh and we were really done with the book at that point. We were just editing. Um, I think that this creepy experience I had in Parowan in my out of body experience, I had an I'm going to say an entity. I think it was Darby. He was interfering in some of my other experiences, waiting for me to be vulnerable enough to take. Because there was a really creepy time where I could freeze time in an out of body experience. So I was like in this room. I knew something was going to fall and shatter or break, and that was going to happen. So it's like I froze time and then I went back in time and knew it was going to happen because I remember I was like, I don't I don't know. I don't think I could be seen, but I didn't know for sure. And I was scared. I remember in this experience, I was scared. And this person, very dark person, I don't want to ever say evil because I didn't ever feel like I was feeling evil. But I was afraid in the out of body. So I must have been fearful he was going to do something because I remember him being like right here. And I remember counting 3, 2, 1 when that was going to break. And he comes in the door, he stood there, and then I go 3, 2, 1, and that shatters or breaks, whatever it was. And I remember feeling him go in my ear, like shaking his head. It was the creepiest thing ever. Like it was just like that was scary for me. And I remember just like I never could like figure out who that was. And it was a very dark person and we're pretty white. So I was like, must not have been like a relative of the sorts. But I kind of I got this epiphany that that was Darby. Like he was literally in a couple of my experiences. And then what I say is I had to have a spiritual intervention to get back. And that's when I was brought back. So I feel like that's why those three spirits, at least three, then for sure were in my room when I came back. I felt kidnapped because I think Darby took me and took me to the in between. So I feel like that's kind of piecing stuff together. It feels good I mean, it doesn't feel good when I say that. No, scratch that. It feels right. Like, oh, okay, that's another piece to the story. That's interesting that he followed me around until I was vulnerable enough in the near death to take me. But I also think there were other entities down there, in the in between, down there, wherever we were. That's why we kind of want to do another session because I feel like that's all I needed to know at the time. Like, it just You learn
Yeah,
what
I
you
think those
know.
sessions are designed for you to get what you need, not necessarily what you want.
Right. Sure.
Okay, so I know that the STE, the end of it wasn't having these regressions. You had another experience. So, do you want to share that one?
Yeah. So that was my last experience in the hospital, the first hospital anyway, about 3.5 weeks in. Um, when it clearly defined to me that I was going to live. Up until then, it was very, very up and down. And so how that went was I was not doing well, and I got a text given to one of my sisters from my cousin who lived in Arizona. And she said, I know Holly's not doing well. Will you read her this text? Because it's a spiritual experience. I usually wouldn't text it, but I feel like she needs to hear it. So they read it to me. The gist of it was I was praying for Holly and her husband Scott and for their well-being. And I have all these spiritual beings surround me. And basically, I asked who they were. She's very visual, or I'm visual. She's more feeler. And so one by one, she said the names of who was there and just letting us know that we have some people on the other side rooting for us and praying for us. And so I remember listening, thinking that was really sweet. And then they must have put me back in a coma because I was not doing well. And then I remember getting really angry. I was so mad. And I was mad because she's kind of like a sister. So it's like that sibling rivalry. And I'm thinking, I'm the one here suffering. Like, that was great. She got that, but why am I not getting that experience? I'm here suffering and I'm not getting that. So I kind of was throwing the little redheaded tantrum, and when we do that, who usually shows up to put us in check is our mamas. And my mom had passed away about 17 months before this, but she came to me on my right side, and she had come to me before in the hospital while I was there, but she had never spoke to me that I had remembered. And this time she did, and she was very clear, and she said, it is not your time to be here and you need to fight. And when she said fight, my brother who had passed on came, stood by her, put his hand on her shoulder, like, yeah, like I agree. And his wife, they both died in separate car wrecks a few years before that, left 4 children in our family. My grandbaby, she had died like 5 months before, just a couple of days old, but she came and she was an adult, but I knew it was her. And I'm laying in my bed, and now all these people are appearing in front of me in white. So I knew they all had passed on. It's, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, just all these people, and they start chanting, fight, fight, fight. And every time they would say the word fight, which made me cringe, by the way, because I had childhood bullies, and fight was just not a word I wanted to hear. So there was that. And I remember after the people in white, then every time the word chant would be chanted fight, a whole new group of people would come behind them. Now they're in street clothes, so I know they're alive. And it's, the husband and my siblings and my kids and friends and people I knew. And then more fight, fight. And it just kept going. And there were all these people I didn't know who now I think were people on all the prayer lists that I was on because it was shut down. Things were shut down, and social media is how we were finding out things. And so many people had all over the world me on prayer lists. I think that those were the people I was seeing. And it was just this such defining moment to know I have thousands of people. I mean, in the Stadium of Light, there were hundreds of thousands of people there, but in the spiritual experience, it was thousands, people that I knew and loved me, and people that I didn't even know that had me my back again and were there in support to let me know. And I thought it was just like that moment so strong where I knew, okay, I just have to fight. It's not going to be easy road back, but I knew I would live after that. It's like no matter what was going to happen, I almost felt like I had cheated death, and here I am. And so I love that was probably one of my favorite experiences just because it was just those faces I got to see that I don't get to see anymore. So
Wow. So I'm curious about your mom. So your mom had been gone for a while. Did she appear a certain age? Did you see detail of what she looked like now?
She just looked like her highest and best self. Like I feel like everyone did. I mean, I would almost say my grandparents and her looked the same age. Like they were just their best self. That's I don't know how else to explain it than that. Everyone just looked. That was where I knew who people were, obviously. That's why I knew there were so many I didn't know because there everyone I knew, I saw, I knew.
I also love that you got to experience your little grandbaby that you had
Oh,
lost and how you said she was only a few days old, but in this
yeah.
she was like she was an adult. And
Yeah, like she was her best self.
I don't think that somebody would probably have dreamt something like that.
Yeah, I ended up having a painting commissioned. It's called Fight. And I could only have 26 people in the painting. They are literally life-size heads. It's 6 foot by 4 foot, way too big. But they kept telling me I had to do it that big to get all the faces correct or whatever. It took me 8 months to get it right, to put everybody in the positions. And in the painting, I'm laying in the bed and they're to the side of me because you can't show them in the painting above me. The painting only means anything to me. It'll probably never mean anything to anyone else. But it just, I felt like it needed to be done, and it showed other heads behind like a shadows because they wouldn't let me put more than 26. But it was really, when there were so many people there, it was really hard to pick the 26. Like, who made the cut? It
Wow.
was tough, but it just, yeah. So it took 8 months to figure it out. And anyway, I have it on one big, huge wall in my house, and it's not where anyone ever sees it. In fact, I don't even think most of my kids have seen it. It's like kind of just like a spiritual thing for me. I don't think it would, I don't know. I don't think they would matter. In fact, my daughter-in-law that lost and my son that lost the baby, they were in looking at something else in that room. And I forgot they hadn't seen it. Well, their baby that passed away, I actually painted her as a baby because that's how I knew her, even though she was an adult in there. I painted her that way. But I remember my daughter-in-law just standing there, just like in awe, looking at this painting, and then I realized, oh my gosh, your baby's in it. Oh, I was like, I hope that was okay. But it was.
Wow. Oh, that was that. I'm really glad that you shared that. And I'm super curious for the people who are watching. Like, what about Holly's experiences connected with you or resonated with you the most? Was it the time when she was having her out of body experiences? Was it the near death experience? Or was it that spiritually transformative experience at the end? I'm just curious what really resonated with you. And if you got this far and you just want to write collective or waking up the collective, then that helps everybody too. But Holly, I would imagine that there are people who are watching right now who want to know where they can get your book, how they can work with you, and because I know you also have a few businesses and you do these retreats too. So tell everybody how they can work with you.
Yeah. Well, I have one link that's a link tree that can take you to my social, to my email, to my website, to the book, to the retreat association we're starting. And there's like so many ways, but that's the best way is just to go to that and then you can find me wherever you.
And what is the link? Is it a certain address or is it too
Um,
long to
the
say
link
it?
tree, yeah, it's just a link tree and then Holly Porter. I'll make sure I give it to you. Do you have show notes or?
Yeah, I put everything in the comments section so people can
Okay.
connect to it
Yeah,
there.
I'll make sure you get that. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Well, we'll put that for everybody to watch. Well, Holly, I'm going to ask you one last question. What do you think after all of these experiences and the integration and everything you learned, what do you think you know for sure?
Hmm. For sure. Well, for sure, I know God exists, no doubt. I knew before, but I think, when you have this kind of experience, you know that. I know for sure that I have a bigger calling, and it doesn't mean it's bigger or better than anyone else's. It's my calling, just like you have yours. And it's big. Like I feel like it's international, it's worldwide. You have things to do, and I don't want to waste a breath because that's what I lost. I don't want to waste a day. I do get setbacks with my long COVID, which totally stink, and I'm sorry for other people that do as well. It's no fun, but you know what? I feel like those are my reminders. I feel like God put me in a coma so that I would sit still and listen to the next steps and really what I was supposed to be doing because I was probably off track. And I feel like the setbacks I get with long COVID are kind of those little reminders again that you need to probably slow down and pay attention to what's next so that you can fulfill your mission.
I love that you said, I don't want to waste a breath because I lost mine. Wow. How profound.
Yeah. Yeah. I love listening to other people's stories too, because, I mean, really, do any of us know without a shadow of a doubt the truth? I
No.
mean, eventually we're all going to
We get
know.
glimpses, and I think that's why people watch these shows, because they get a glimpse here and a glimpse there, and then they can just take in what resonates and leave behind what doesn't and have their
Yeah.
own idea of how they think things work. And I think that's the beauty
Yeah.
of this.
I love sharing with people too that when they've lost a loved one and they think, why didn't they want to come back, or why did they not get a choice either? They had to stay. I mean, I didn't get a choice, but I would have stayed. And I'll tell you what, I don't know who wouldn't stay. Where we were is way better than where we are. So for people, it's not about you. It's not about that. And so a lot of times we think, oh, they don't want to come back and be with me, or especially if they were married or had kids. It's not about that. There's a bigger plan in play. And just know if you've lost a loved one, they're in a much better place. Be jealous.
Yeah, they are in a much better place. And also, I think from doing this interviewing for so long, nobody dies before their time. It doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so true.
Wow. Well, Holly, I want to thank you so much. Thank you for your vulnerability and wanting to come in and share these experiences with people to help them in some way. And I want to thank you. Thank you so much for what you are doing to help wake up the collective. It is so needed right now.
Well, thank you for having shows that let people hear other people's stories. I think it's wonderful. And
Aw, well, I want to also thank everybody who's watching. This show is absolutely nothing without all of you who tune in to watch, to listen, and to share these beautiful experiences with somebody who needs them. And if you still have questions, you can join me for Wake Up Wednesdays live at 5 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, everybody, for watching. There's a reason you found this video. These stories awaken something ancient inside us. Hit subscribe and stay on the path with us.